I want to talk about gender inequality. It's been a very hot topic here in the United States, and I think that we can all say that in history we've come a long ways. We've seen significant advancements in towards equality, but in some countries like China, we've seen very little progress. China's traditional views say that boys are preferred over girls, and this has been the case for several centuries. Even though China's foundation is based on equality, the country still feels biased towards girls. There are two deep-rooted reasons for this. Girls are seen as a financial burden, especially to the poor and the rural families who must come up with expensive dowries for their marriages. Boys are counted on upon to take care of their parents during their old age. And really the big reason, I think, is there's still this big belief that boys are the only ones that can carry on the family bloodline. Most Chinese women feel they have to produce an heir. And if they don't, there's this much shame and despair that's brought upon their family. There's so much pressure put on these poor women. And unfortunately, the pressure was intensified in the 1980s when China put in place the one-child policy. The reason behind that was when Chairman Mao, who was the leader of China at the time, he was encouraging people to have 4 or more children within a family. But there was such a food shortage, and there was so many people died of starvation. The government was scared if they couldn't get control over the population growth, that the nation would eventually just collapse. And the Chinese Communist Party instituted that one-child policy as a radical way to gain control over population. And the hope was that it would ultimately give a greater prosperity for future generations. And you might think, how could a nation enforce a policy on so many people? And how they did it is that in each province of the country, there was a family planning officials, and they're controlled by the government. And these officials have quotas that they have to meet. The married couples have to request a birth permit to be able to have a child. It is the family planning official's responsibility to enforce this and promoting the policy and doing family inspections. Another part of this, how they enforce people to have just one child, is they disperse rewards and punishments. So one of the rewards would be, depending on the province and where they live, they may receive a certificate of honor for a single child parent. Sometimes they get a monthly stipend from the government, special pension benefits, preferable treatment when applying to a government job. But if you don't obey this, there are consequences and repercussions to it. Sometimes you can be fined up to 4 to 6 times a person's yearly wage. And because the officials are pressed to meet quotas, sometimes new and brutal tactics were and are being used. In 2012, there was a picture that was circling the web of a dead baby in a bucket of water. This baby was a victim of this policy. A full-term pregnancy woman was hunted down and captured by the Chinese family planning officials because she had already had one child. She was restrained and given injections and induced into labor, and the baby came out crying, and this picture is of them throwing that baby in a bucket and left it to drown. This cruel and inhumane treatment towards women and their babies is very common, unfortunately, in China. There's a woman who talked on CNN and told her impact that it had on her when she had a forced abortion. She said that she felt empty, as if that something was scooped out of me. And my husband and I had been so excited for our new baby, and now suddenly that all hope and joy and excitement had disappeared. I believe that the Chinese women are in sexual slavery. The government is raping them. The culture is telling them that they are not desired. They're a burden to their families. Women are born and brought up thinking that they must act and be a certain way and a dignified, only to be crushed if they cannot have a son. New ways have been brought up on how to have boys and not girls, and that's been with the advance of technology. The use of the ultrasound now is being used as a tool to determine the sex of the baby. Even though the sex-selective abortions was banned in China in 1995, it's still widely used. And since it's almost impossible to prove that abortion had been done for that sole reason, this practice still remains. It's a very tragic consequence of this. There are big consequences for this gender imbalance. They say, and they call this gendercide is the actual technical term for it. Experts believe and predict that by 2020, China will have home to 40 million more men than women under the age of 20. That number is equivalent to the total population of men under 20 in the United States. Dramatically, the policy has broken families, and it's instilled fear in family members, and it has made people act out in awful ways. Many put pressure on women to abort their girls and for boys. And husbands are often use divorce as a way of punishment for their wives and refuse to abort. Families and friends begin to belittle their pregnant women for wanting to keep their babies. Families begin to thrive on resentment, and abused relationships develop where love instead should be prospering.